You think you know weird? You've seen the anglerfish, the blobfish, the platypus. Cute. Nature's little inside jokes. But this is different. This is a 300-million-year-old creature, so fundamentally wrong, so alien in its design, that the smartest minds on the planet can't even decide if it's a monster with a backbone or a demon snail. It's a biological crime scene. They call it the Tully Monster, and it breaks every rule of evolution we thought we had. Forget everything you know. We're about to dissect the impossible. So, what happens when you let a cosmic horror author design a creature? You get this. The body plan from a fever dream. Let's just get this out of the way. The Tully Monster is not an animal. It's an anatomical catastrophe. It's a soft-bodied torpedo, about the size of your foot, with a pair of eyes mounted on the ends of a rigid bar, like some kind of grotesque hammerhead thing. Oh, and it has a long trunk-like proboscis extending from its head, which ends in a hinged claw full of tiny, sharp teeth. It is a collection of spare parts that evolution seemingly found at the bottom of the bin and glued together as a prank. This isn't speculation. It's fossil fact. Discovered in the Mazon Creek fossil beds in Illinois, these 300-million-year-old slabs of rock have preserved these creatures in shocking detail. We can clearly see the segmented, slug-like body. We can see the bizarre transverse bar holding its pigment spots, which scientists are confident are primitive eyes. And we can absolutely see that horrifying flexible neck arm, sometimes as long as a third of its entire body, tipped with that nightmare pincer. There are thousands of specimens, and they all tell the same impossible story. This thing was real. Look at it. Really look at it. This isn't just a weird animal. It's a violation. No other creature in the history of the planet has ever thought, you know what would be a great idea? Eyes on a stick, separated from the head. And you know what else? A mouth on a completely different stick. It's the biological equivalent of finding a car that has wings for wheels, a boat propeller on the roof, and is powered by bicycle pedals. You don't know how it moves or what it's for, but every instinct in your body screams that it should not exist. How did this anatomical absurdity even hunt? How did it see? How did its brain process information from eyes that were off on their own little adventure? It's a biological paradox that swam in our oceans for millions of years. But as profoundly disturbing as its body is, that's just the surface-level weirdness. The real scientific knife fight, the argument that has been raging for over 60 years, is over something much more fundamental, something that gets to the very core of its identity. What in the hell was it? For decades, the Tully Monster was the ultimate paleontological orphan. It was officially an incertae sedis, a fancy Latin way of saying, we have absolutely no clue. Scientists threw it around like a hot potato. Is it a weird worm? A shell-less snail? A free-swimming problem? Nobody knew. Then, in 2016, a bombshell. The vertebrate identity crisis. A major study published in the journal Nature pointed a shaking finger at the monster and screamed, "It's one of us." They claimed the Tully Monster wasn't some invertebrate weirdo. It was a vertebrate, a jawless predatory fish distantly related to modern lampreys. The alien finally had a family, and it was ours. This wasn't a wild guess. The team analyzed over 1,200 fossilized monsters. Using powerful imaging technology, they identified structures they claimed were a notochord, a primitive cartilage rod that serves as a precursor to a backbone. They found evidence of gill pouches. Most convincingly, they analyzed the chemical structure of the creature's eye pigments, the melanosums, and found they were organized in a way that is supposedly unique to vertebrates. For a brief, shining moment, the case was closed. The monster was a fish. This news was both comforting and deeply unsettling. The monster wasn't an alien. It was just a very, very ugly cousin from a branch of the family tree we'd all agreed to forget. But then, science did what it does best. It started a massive, glorious brawl. Almost immediately, other teams of scientists fired back. They claimed the notochord was just the creature's preserved gut, that the gills were meaningless blobs, that other invertebrates could have similar eye chemistry. The whole situation devolved into the scientific equivalent of arguing over a blurry photo of Bigfoot. One group swears they see the outline of a primate, muscle striations and all. The other group is yelling that it's just a tree stump and a trip of the light. The scientific community was conducting a full-blown paranormal investigation over a 300-million-year-old smudge. This public, peer-reviewed fistfight is maddening. The evidence is so ambiguous that brilliant people look at the exact same fossil and see two completely different animals. So if it's not a protofish, and the vertebrate evidence is just a ghost story, then what is the alternative? The answer throws us right back into the deepest, darkest abyss of evolutionary possibility. So, the monster might not be family. The evidence for it being a vertebrate is a scientific civil war with no end in sight, which leaves us with a possibility that is somehow so much worse. The invertebrate nightmare hypothesis. What if we've been trying to fit a square peg into a round hole? What if the Tully Monster isn't a protofish at all, but a hyper-evolved nightmarish snail? Or a bizarre sea slug from the dawn of time? Or, the most chilling option, what if it belongs to a phylum of life that was completely erased from existence, leaving no descendants? Remember that notochord the vertebrate camp was so excited about? Subsequent studies in 2017 and 2019 argued persuasively that its structure and position are far more consistent with a digestive tract, an intestine. The vertebrate proponents saw a backbone. The invertebrate camp saw a poop chute. Furthermore, they demonstrated that the complex chemistry of its eyes could easily be a case of convergent evolution, where two unrelated species independently evolved similar traits. It wouldn't be the first time. This evidence throws the Tully Monster right back into the invertebrate mystery box, lumping it in with mollusks, arthropods, or other long-extinct weirdos. This is, without a doubt, the creepier explanation. If it was a vertebrate, it was at least playing by some of the rules we understand. But if it's an invertebrate, it's a ghost from a deleted scene of evolution. It's an emissary from a timeline that failed. Think of it like this. It's like archaeologists finding the ruins of an ancient, unknown civilization. But instead of pyramids and pottery, they find structures built from impossible geometry and tools that operate on laws of physics we don't comprehend. That's the Tully Monster. It's not a distant ancestor. It's proof that life on this planet once went down a completely different, utterly alien path. A path so strange, so unsuccessful, that nature itself put a cosmic dead-end sign on it and wiped it from the tree of life. So here we are. We have an unholy chimera of a body that defies biological engineering. We have a taxonomic identity so controversial it causes scientific riots. We've established that it's either a freakish cousin or an alien ghost. But we've avoided the single most terrifying question. How did this thing actually live? What was its purpose in that 300-million-year-old ocean? We've obsessed over what it was. Let's talk about what it did. Because nature doesn't build something this absurd without a horrifying purpose. The claw-faced ambush predator. That bizarre trunk-like appendage wasn't for gently sniffing flowers. That claw on the end wasn't for show. This entire creature was a purpose-built ambush machine. The Tully Monster was an active, swimming predator that hunted by shooting its own face at its victims. Let's just look at the specs. That long proboscis was incredibly flexible, allowing it to aim and strike. The pincer at the end was armed with up to 8 sharp, conical teeth, perfect for piercing and gripping soft-bodied prey. Its eyes, mounted on that weird bar, It has excellent stereoscopic vision, the hallmark of a predator that needs to judge distance with pinpoint accuracy before lunging. And its streamlined, muscular body meant it could move fast. It lived in the murky waters of a coastal estuary, the perfect hiding spot for a creature waiting to explode out of the mud and ruin some poor shrimp's entire day. Let's paint a picture. You're some small, defenseless Paleozoic creature swimming through the dark, muddy water. Life is simple. Suddenly, the silt erupts. A fleshy torpedo with dead eyes on a stick rockets towards you. Before you can even process this anatomical nightmare, a grotesque neck arm, a limb that has no right to exist, snaps out. And at the end of it, a jaw, a claw, a thing full of teeth bites down on you. It's a biological sarlacc pit that learned how to swim. It is H.P. Lovecraft's first, most deranged doodle. This wasn't some slow, bumbling oddity. It was an efficient, terrifying hunter that used its own bizarre body as a spring-loaded weapon. An impossible body, a schizophrenic identity, and a hunting strategy designed by a horror movie director. We have all the pieces of this incoherent puzzle. So what is the final verdict on the most bizarre creature ever discovered? So what is the Tully Monster? Is it a vertebrate? An invertebrate? A fever dream etched in stone? The most honest and most chilling answer is, we still don't know. Tullimonstrum remains a ghost. It's a Rorschach test for paleontologists, a monster that stares back from the abyss of deep time and defies every box we try to put it in. It is the ultimate proof that evolution is not a clean, straight line. It's a chaotic, deranged scribble, full of monsters, dead ends, and biological impossibilities that remind us just how little we actually know. The true takeaway isn't what the Tully Monster was, but what it represents. It's a fossilized monument to the idea that the past is a truly alien planet. For every animal we can classify, there's another one lurking in the rock, waiting to shatter our perception of what life is and what it can be. What other evolutionary nightmares should we dig up next? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to join us for our next dive into the biological abyss, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell. Finally, a huge thank you to our patrons, whose support makes these deep dives into the weirdness of life possible.